Thank you for joining us for Lou Norman. He is a multi-domain architect for Cisco's public sector team with over 30 years of experience in network and security solutions. He holds CCIE and CISSP certifications and is a member of the Arizona Cyber Threat Response Association and InfraGard. This is Securing Your World in the Age of AI.
Thank you. Oh, it's the afternoon. How is everyone doing? All right, so I'm going to talk about, the world of AI and securing it. I've been actually, had a good view of what's been getting presented. So if you're in some of the presentations that were here earlier, I'm going to try to skip some of the stuff that they covered. But who am I? So I am a solutions engineer, cybersecurity architect. I've had multiple titles and been doing the same job. I've been at Cisco for a very long time. And the reason I want to tell you this story is why I'm so excited about AI. So when I got my first real job, after college, it was in networking. Now, networking was much different then, right? Ethernet networks were pretty small. I actually was running a data PBX, and you can go look in your history books to find out what a data PBX is, but it's basically a phone switch for terminals, for terminal asynchronous connectivity is what it was. And at the time, it was the backbone of the university. We had about 2,500 terminals hooked up to it, and at that time, the Ethernet network, which I'm make assumption everybody knows what Ethernet is. It's what you use for wireless and everything else these days. The Ethernet network had about 235 devices on the total Ethernet network at the university, university-wide. When I came to Cisco 7 years later, the Ethernet network had tripled the size of the old async network in a very, very short span because of 10BASE-T was invented. So basically, that's the ability to run Ethernet over a twisted pair. So if you have like those RJ45 jacks on the back of your cable modem or something at your house, that's probably 100BASE-T or gigabit Ethernet, as a matter of fact, these days. But we were basically installing things as fast as we could back in those days because the demand was growing for it. And that's where we're at with AI today. The demand for AI is going through the roof. I mean, everybody's looking at it. Every vendor, every customer, every hacker, all the defenders, everybody is looking at AI today for good, for the bad, for the ugly, and all of that. And really, what is that today? And that's kind of what I want to talk about, kind of what it is, which I'll skip through some of that because a bunch of the other presenters have already done that today. But I'm going to talk about how we can actually stop things and secure it. So the attack surface, right? So what do we consider to be attack surface? Attack surface is everything that's available for somebody to come after. Whether it's your phone, whether it's your laptop, whether it's a big computer, or maybe it's a large array of DPUs that's actually running some type of AI infrastructure, right? All of that is the attack surface today. How do we monitor it? How do we fight it? How do we really kind of bring all of this together? And it's been changing over the years. It is not something that's steady state, and it's going to change into the future as well. And that's one of the things I like about it is, we're going to go learn new things and do new things that we've never done before. Now, AI really isn't new, right? So a lot of the stuff that, we see today is around, the large language models and ChatGPT. That's kind of what gets all of the fanfare. It might make pretty pictures. It might make emails easier to spoof, all of those kinds of things. But the real meat of this is better or more sinister, depending on how you want to look at that, right? And so you have all of these different parts of AI. There's a whole bunch of different things around here. And this has been around, like I say, some of these things, we've been doing machine learning stuff for a very long time, right? And so we're building this out more and more and more. Now, how we actually use these different parts is different. Some of the machine learning kind of thing, that's going to get built into a vendor's product, right? It's what you're going to use to extrapolate information to make decisions off of, right? And that's, like I say, that's been around for some time. Now, we're actually growing that learning capabilities, right? So now we can take a bunch of machine language, dump it into a much larger data set, and actually pull more information out of it with AI. And a lot of the generative AI side of the house, which is going to make a lot of this easier to do. One of the big challenges you have if you work in security, out in the real world today, it's very, very, very complex, right? And not everybody knows what they need to do. I work in the government and education sector. Most of the customers there have somewhere between 60 and 70 cyber tools running on their networks, in their data centers, in their clouds. That's about average, 60 to 70. It's really hard to be an expert in 60 or 70 different tools. Now, the other piece of it is, and we're seeing folks actually start building out a lot more SOCs these days, right? SOCs have been a challenge because you had to, in the past, you had to have really, really smart people who knew what they were doing to actually be any usefulness in a SOC. Well, today, with generative AI, we can actually simplify those tools. That you can ask a question like, what's going to block TikTok in my firewall? Or is my firewall blocking TikTok? You don't have to actually know how to configure a firewall or anything like that, but you can use an AI assistant that will actually help you dig into that. And this is what's helping and making things easier from an overall running perspective and asking, is my network safe? I mean, that's the question that we always get asked if you're around, folks talking about, is our network safe? Well, we can talk about, what that really means, and we'll kind of continue with that. Now, these are the different parts of this, and this is kind of stuff I saw somebody else was presenting on this earlier, but basically, it's how we actually transform data into being something useful. And, this is something that's, from my side of the world, this is new to me, right? I've relied on other vendors and stuff to do this for us for a long time at Cisco because, I started off in networking and then came to security. But now we're, from a security side, being security focused, this is a big part about what we're doing is how we actually take data and turn it into something useful. Because if there's anything a network can do, a network can generate data like you don't believe. And a modern firewall can generate an unbelievable amount of data. One of the big challenges we have today with firewalls in very large environments is what we need to do with all the logging, right? So if you're running IPS on a couple hundred gigabits worth of traffic, the amount of logs it generates it's astronomical. So we have to do something useful with that data, and this is how we're going to do it. Now, this is we call this the hype cycle, but basically it shows, when something first gets introduced, it grows really fast, and then basically over time, we kind of go through, we have the peak of inflated expectations, which I would say, kind of this is where we're at, right? A lot of people have different expectations for AI. And so understanding what it can do for you, what it can't do for you, what it might already be doing for you, because like I said, a lot of this is already being done. And then we come down here, what we call the trough of disillusionment. So basically, when reality sets in, what people have to have, and then basically, everything else will finally start to catch up with it. And there's ways to shortcut down this path with the right people and the right technology, and sometimes a little bit of luck. But it's going to take a while, but at the same time, growth is going to keep going up. The use and growth of AI is going to continue over this cycle. Now, there's a couple of things here I think that are really important for everyone to understand about these things, right? So we're talking about assisted intelligence, augmented intelligence, automation, and autonomous intelligence. Autonomous intelligence is hard. This is kind of the hard piece of it to fit in. Automation, there's a lot of work to be done in automation. So if you're interested in networking and security and things like that, the automation side is ripe with employment opportunities right now. So folks that, can actually do automation with, whatever tools that are out there. There's lots of tools out there to do automation with. Virtually every vendor out there, Cisco and Palo and CrowdStrike and all the other vendors out there, they all have some type of automation built into their systems today because it's something that's kind of required to make sure it all works. So, and that can be around AI kinds of things, or it can be just around manipulation that you guys want to do. When you discover something, I need to be able to go fix whatever that is and kick it off with automation. And the key there is, and I talked about this earlier, about not everybody's going to know how to do everything. Automation allows people to do things without being an expert in it, right? So a SOC analyst, can find some TTPs, in a process, in a program, on someone's laptop, whatever it may be, and you need to do something with those TTPs. Well, the SOC analysts don't run the firewall. They probably don't run the endpoint protection. They certainly don't run the servers, but we need to go put aspects to either block a file, block an IP address, block a DNS registry. Automation is the way to do that they can kick off a process that will actually go off to the firewall, go off to the servers, go off to the DNS, and block things automatically from that perspective. Now, some of those things, could we do this with autonomous intelligence? Yes, we can, but a lot of people don't trust it yet. There's a certain amount of trust that people will put in AI and what they can do. And so this is the big challenge that a lot of folks are working on, is this autonomous intelligence that I detect something and I'm automatically going to go turn blocking on. Believe it or not, from an IPS perspective, we've been able to do that for 2 decades. 2 decades ago, we could actually have IPS signatures that would actually go off and block things at the firewall, and it ended horribly. Some of those products, the problem was the signatures, not the automation process of it. But, we used to have a real problem with IPS 20 years ago with false positives. And so it actually put a, kind of a bad taste about some of this automated intelligence kind of piece. But the other kind of, feeding this, augmented intelligence, right now, a lot of that's done by hand, right? That's done by folks in the SOC, that they take a bunch of different intelligence they got from multiple tools and make a decision like, oh, I saw that, I saw that, I saw that. Well, that's all. Put those 3 things together and they're bad. And we'll go do something about that, right? So that's really kind of that augmented intelligence, which we do every day in SOCs all over the world. We're getting better about bringing those things together. They've introduced in the last few years a product called XDR that basically helps you do that. Because that was something that everybody was really trying to challenge. And it's gotten much, much easier from that perspective, which is nice. Now, AI is coming, right? We have, lots of different tasks and stuff that we can do from an AI perspective. A lot of this actually isn't cybersecurity related. It's just, what we can do with data and really understanding what people need, what they might need from social programs at the state and local government perspective, or, what's making students be more successful at one school or another. All of that's happening today with AI. And we can start looking at, some of the critical sectors. So I focus a lot of my time with my customers on the critical sectors, something we do with the InfraGard all the time, about all the different things out there that we're really fighting. And you can start looking at, all the risks and stuff and the billions of dollars that are being spent around these things. And even though we're spending lots and lots of money at it, we're still having trouble. So we need to bring some of that to light about how we can do it better. Now, one of the other things, too, that to really start thinking about is with AI is, are you going to do this all yourself? Are you going to rent it, buy it? Infrastructure for AI is not cheap, right? And, from a standpoint, I'll speak, kind of for where I live in it. Most all of our AI products that Cisco has today actually run in the cloud. Now, it's something you have to pay for because, it takes infrastructure to run it, but that's basically how most of my customers, from a pure security perspective, are treating AI. Now, I have lots of other customers that are doing AI projects, not so much around security and networking, but they're doing AI projects on campuses all over the place where they've actually built out AI infrastructure. So a whole bunch of NVIDIA DPUs connected together by either Ethernet or some technology. There's a couple other technologies out there to do it, but they basically build these AI farms. I don't have a better word for it, an AI farm. And they have to secure those. There's lots of data being passed around. If something were to get turned loose in one of these environments, because most of them are research environments, they could poison their data, which would be bad, so it would give them bad data. They could actually, steal their compute space, which is a lot of compute space. They might want to steal that. We actually had that happen at another university here not too long ago, that somebody basically took over their AI compute space and was running their own projects with it. For good or evil, I never found out which, but the university was quite upset about that. So, how you actually fit into this world, there's lots of opportunities out there. Another, from being a young person going to school and early in your career, these are the kinds of things that, you get into a growing market. There's not going to be old guys like me who are experts at it already, and you can start really actually building out your career and jumping on that. I mean, that's basically what happened with me when I jumped into the Ethernet networking world. I was younger than everybody else that worked there. I could read a manual, and kind of things exploded for me from that perspective. But really understanding some of these cycles about where you're at with this, where the market's at with this, can actually lead to, from a career perspective, a lot of good things. And this basically, gets to the talent development side of it, right? One thing I love about the internet and, what we have today is that information is out there. Google has tons of really good free classes on AI. They have lots of some tools that are actually pretty cheap, if not free, to learn and do things with AI. And really starting to build those skill sets into everything you do will make you better. I talk to salespeople that work for Cisco, and there's tools in there that they can actually use Google's AI to practice running a sales call. Very, very good use of it, very good understanding of it, right? They can actually give it some parameters that, I want to sell a firewall. This is the customer, and they start talking to it, and as soon as they stop talking, the AI asks them questions back. It's really pretty cool from that perspective. And we can expand that into many, many other things as well. So really knowing what these tools are, using them, because even today, I hate to tell this, I'm a boomer, folks. And I can actually use AI, and I use AI in my job every week, right? Because it makes me better at my job. So really understanding this stuff and heading down it is good. Yeah. So now from a security standpoint, AI is trending high, right? We're seeing a lot of it. I actually watched one of the videos that the university here has on about phishing attacks. It's definitely on the rise from that perspective. That's not the only problem we need to solve in security, though, but it is on the rise. These are all the kind of different things that we see from an AI perspective. I mean, probably the biggest thing that we're actually running into right now is really data privacy, right? That people will put private information for whether it's a for-profit company or a government institution puts a bunch of information out into the AI ether that should not be put out there. So that's one of the biggest things that we see, and actually some of the most costly things that we've been seeing from that perspective. So keep an eye on that. Output reliability. And this is the thing from my standpoint that I've talked to a lot of my coworkers that, when we, were early growing some of our AI tools at Cisco, they're like, yeah, I don't like the answers that AI is giving. Well, that's good that you knew that the answer was wrong before you forwarded it on. So it's good to have some base knowledge of what you're talking about, because if you think AI is going to do it all for you, I will tell you that's not true, right? So AI is going to help you do your job. It's not going to do your job for you. So how you look at this and what these tools give you is understanding that, did I ask the question right? That's the number one problem for most of the stuff I do with AI. Did I ask the right question to get the right output? And the other thing too, and this is the big thing, is you have to start putting limits on what AI is going to give back to you, right? Because if it just gives you, if it's going to do a dump of information on you, half of it's not going to be any good, and you don't care about another quarter of it. So kind of keep that. But all of these kinds of things really are bringing things together. Now, harmful bias. So this, there can be some harmful biases in AI. When I'm talking about data sets that you control that might be a part of the system and things that you're working on, that kind of bias can be built in, and that's why you need people to look over when you first start building some of these systems, to look over and understand that's biased data and that answer is wrong, right? And so if you're building those kinds of things and actually, trying to build out AI, I've made a few attempts on my compute farm at home, which is basically one big PC, but and the data that I'm feeding into it and what I get output, it's most of the time, half the time, I'm just putting in the wrong data, but just to kind of understand all these different parts of it. So there are standards right now for AI out there. So it's not just, somebody making some of these things up. They are actually doing standards. They've actually done some standards with China even. But we're going to see where a lot of this goes. I think there's going to be some challenges along the way. We haven't seen the end of this from that perspective. So it's going to be fun to see where this actually works out of. But I do like this statement, right? I'll let you guys all read it. But really is understanding, and again, and the other thing too, one of the things I didn't say at the beginning of my presentation, anytime I present to students, because sometimes I'll let some stuff out about, well, this is how you bypass this firewall, or this is how you can actually look up this kind of information. Use this information for good. Don't use it for evil, please. So, but yeah, I mean, it really is, trustworthy. Trustworthy is the thing is, we need to be able to trust what we're doing. And that's key. These are a bunch of bills. We can see up some of these kinds of things. Let's get to here. Hacking. We're hearing lots and lots of hacking, right? We hear a lot of this. Now, hacking sounds, about evil AI, right? I'm old, so Terminator comes up. That's Skynet's coming after us. Ghost in the Shell. All the college kids have seen Ghost in the Shell for sure. Another evil AI. And, iRobot's another one of those movies. Now the question is, should we be fearing AI? Or should we actually be fearing all the robots? It's not the AI, it's the robots that we should be scared of. But we're not making robots, so I saw something driving around here earlier that might have been a robot. So again, let's kind of define a few things here. I'll let you guys read through this. Because one of the things I'm very much part of is the machine learning aspects of this. Machine learning's been around for a long time, and we've had some very good success with security products, specifically using AI. So we've seen all this attacks with, much better written emails, right? I think that's actually the next slide. Yeah, AI phishing attacks from here. I've seen the emails that a lot of people have clicked on, and they all had one thing in common. They promised something that they were never, ever going to get, right? So if somebody's going to give you $50,000, you're not going to get it just clicking on your computer. I hate to tell you that. I know there's lots of princes and other folks around the world that want to give you $50,000, but you're probably never, ever going to get it. And then that even goes to, if you're just, to the point of giving away free McDonald's. So one of the emails that we said, it was giving away a free Big Mac at McDonald's. And at this particular institution, they had thousands of people click on it, right? And it was just completely random. It was poorly written. And it didn't look anything beautiful like AI today. And so people were still clicking on that. Are more people clicking on something that's better looking? Yeah, probably. But you still have the exact same problem you had before this. And it's really how we actually going to take care of and do this. So, like I say, we can have some, really coherently written. One of the things, and this is actually something from a very large company that I know of, the email that they got was from their kid's school. So they knew where his kid went to school, right? That's what the attacker knew. They knew where the kid went to school. Basically said, and they knew that 2 days prior to this, that they had a security incident at that school. And they basically sent out an email saying, this is from John's school. We're here to tell you that, this happened. And they put a bunch of information that they literally cut and pasted out of the local newspaper and said, we'd like to hear from you about how this made you feel. Click this link. And it was a very well-crafted, very specific to a specific vice president at this rather large company. And they had all that information. And having that information was more important about how the email was actually written, because it was really pretty simple to write. It wasn't very much in there. But it had the right background. It had those are the kinds of things that people look for. So we like I say, and oh, by the way, that was 7 years ago. That wasn't a couple of years ago. That was 7 years ago that this was going on. So, what do we got here? Different attacks. How am I doing on time? I don't have a timer. The timer's running, so I got some time. So there's different kinds of attacks that we're actually coming from, from an AI perspective. Whether they're privacy, poisoning, I mean, these are all types of attacks that we have. And different tools will help you, different AI tools will help with almost all of these. And some of these we're actually seeing on the dark web today to help you actually do, these kinds of things, right? Depending on how far and deep you want to get into the AI side of security or the securing of AI. There's all sorts of things that are happening today. And again, securing the infrastructure that you run on is a very key piece of this. And I'll go back to that. This gets back to securing your infrastructure. We'll stop most of these attacks, just making sure your infrastructure is secure. Now, Cisco is probably one of my few product slides, and it's okay because this product is brand new and it hardly exists. But this is a product we call HyperShield that basically can look at the different segments inside of a network and identify what's on those segments inside that network and actually secure it using eBPF inside of Linux. So this is actually a tool that runs inside. It basically allows you to monitor the kernel level firewall and manage the kernel level firewall inside of Unix. But having that deep of a look into what that device is doing, A, it's really fast, and B, it gives us a lot of visibility to what's going on, so we can actually take that information and start defining what's good and evil. Now, that's, to me, is one of the things a lot of folks look over when they're doing security. You can't do security without visibility. You have to be able to see what you're doing. The example I've always been using for a long time, you'd be, as a professional baseball player, if the batter's standing there in the box and they're pitching at him, it's the ALCS, Dodgers. If the batter's blindfolded, they're not going to hit much. They're not going to hit very many balls if they're blindfolded. And so you actually have to have this visibility piece of it. And security tools have gotten much better over the last few years about making sure visibility is built into everything. But that visibility aspect will actually help you understand what you're doing. So when you start looking at, protecting AI code, from development of it, this is the process that a lot of folks go through. And you can't skip steps in these things. And this is something that, folks that do a lot of code development are really pretty good at it. Some people skip steps, and that's how we end up with some very major breaches and really big problems in our world, is if any of these different steps are skipped as they're actually trying to do this from a development standpoint. Now, from the perspective, we've been doing lots of different things. This is my favorite. Has anybody heard of OpenDNS? A few people have, good. Cisco now sells a commercial product called Umbrella, which is developed from that. This is OpenDNS. The guys that founded that company were mathematicians. That's what they did. They weren't networking people, they weren't security people, they were mathematicians. But they looked at a problem that somebody posed to them, and they figured how to write, a mathematical formula to determine whether a site is good or bad. And it's more than 3 formulas, and it's a little bit more complex than this, but this is how they started. And it's really taking something that they had a very large data set, lots of DNS in the world, millions and millions of requests get done all the time, and it basically allows them to take and look at all of those DNS requests and then basically say whether, site A is good, site B is not so good, site C, or site D is not so good, but site C in between them, and start looking at co-occurrence models and actually how they can bring all that together. And they could actually, with no human intervention, say that website is bad, or that URL is bad, or that DNS entry is bad. And that's, like I say, this is something that was developed more than a decade ago. And it's still working today, it still works, it's awesome. And it's a great tool that we have to help secure our customers. Now, a couple of the other things too that, we're going to start talking about AI assistance, right? Because to me, I think this is something that's going to be really big for my world, is making our tools easier for our customers to use. And basically, what, how, and why. So sometimes people don't need to know why, believe it or not. They need to know what, and that's why it's big and in the middle. and how to do it gets to be a challenge, right? That's one of the problems that we're really trying to solve here is the how. And being able to bring these together in an interface that you can just type in a question and ask a question, and it'll give you back a useful answer. And this is, I say, this is something we do today. This is not something we're talking about the future. We can do this on, I think, 7 different products right now inside of Cisco. Our competitors are doing very similar things. They're all trying to make their stuff easier to use. But this will basically make the task of securing someone's infrastructure much, much easier from that perspective. Now, a lot of this, if you're developing applications, so if you're on the development side of the house, this is something that's very, very relevant to you. But like I say, we're doing this today, right? Knowledge-based services, configuration log files, support tickets, product analytics, ServiceNow requests. That's the baseline. That's what people will see. All the other things that are up above it are things that people won't see. These are the things at the top have to be developed. The stuff around green on the bottom is actually what's getting used by users. And you can say there's a lot of different things going on there and things that matter to some people, things might not matter to others. If you're on the product side of the house developing products, you have to make sure your products are developing information and basically taking the data and doing something good with it. How we can do that, whether we have to do that product by product, or if we're going to do that in a much larger realm of things, right? So if you guys came by our booths, the Splunk folks, they're the guys that are bringing the big realm to Cisco from that perspective. They're starting to help bring all that stuff together. But all of this exists today. It's not anything new, right? But we just have to make better ways of bringing it together and using it. So this is kind of, talking about stuff I've already said. Let's get to more of the assistant pieces of it. Let's get to some of the fun stuff.
Fine.
How did we secure it?
Can also.
This is just looking at some of the policy tools that we have and the assistants. This is some of the information that we have for getting all this information out. I'm just going to jump through some of these. Oh, this is a really cool tool. So we call this encrypted visibility engine. One of the big challenges we have in the security world is, anybody want to guess what the percentage of encrypted traffic is on the network these days? I guess? It's probably, depending on what you're doing, got a guess? The guess was 90%, and give the guy a teddy bear, because that's correct. It's about 90%, give or take. And that encryption, what's even getting worse about that encryption these days is you can't, as a network administrator or a firewall guy, you can't decrypt it. Because sometimes there's rules, laws, and regulations that prevent you from decrypting it. And other things you just don't want to know. Some of this stuff you just don't want to know or might not care. All those things come into play. But basically being able to take and look at attributes of a flow and determine, using ML and AI to determine whether that flow is good or bad. And that's actually what we can do with Eve, the encryption visibility engine. We can actually say, because one of the big things that gets used a lot today, everybody uses Google here. If everybody uses Google, you use a protocol called QUIC, right? Which actually, QUIC isn't actually a name. It's actually the name. It doesn't actually stand for anything. But basically, QUIC is a encryption protocol that runs really fast and doesn't use very many resources on the sending end or the receiving end. So that makes it a beautiful thing. It was developed by Google. It's really hard to decrypt QUIC because the encryption keys are basically set up for each session and not something that you can store and decrypt in somewhere along the line. So it makes it really tough to decrypt it. But if we can actually know what's running over QUIC, so one of the banes of my existence is basically people running DNS over an encrypted protocol. QUIC, right? You can't see it, you can't control it. Well, I'm running Umbrella, I want to control my DNS, so I actually have to be able to identify something. I can identify QUIC, and I can identify that it's running DNS over QUIC, and basically say, hey, I don't want that DNS going to Google, I want that DNS going to my own services, hopefully Umbrella, and we're going to do something with it, right? And we can block it, allow it, whatever it may be, because some things you're going to allow, some things you might want to block. So those are the kinds of real tasks that, that AI is actually helping us out with from that perspective. And here's kind of a little quick thing on, hopefully, you guys know what TorSite is, right? use it for good, not for evil. But we can actually identify a lot of Tor sites and actually be able to look at encrypted traffic that we're not decrypting it, but we can tell it's going to a Tor site. So those are all really, really important things from that perspective. Another thing we've come up with, so you heard me talking about IPS, which is an improvement intrusion protection system. And IPS has been around for a long time. Snort is one of the big ones. I don't know if they guys use Snort or Suricata or something here. But we've actually written a machine language code set to use with IPS signatures that basically allows us to inject ML into IPS signatures, which is another great way of detecting things. It's really some cool things that's been developed. There's a YouTube video here to go watch. Actually, it's really kind of cool. Email threat defense. So earlier we talked about email from the standpoint of people sending phishing emails and that. Today, we can't have enough signatures to stop all the emails. We actually have to use machine language and large language models to start determining things, right? So some of the stuff that they actually do with the large language models are easy for us to detect because once we've detected them one place, we can detect them others, right? So if a particular group is using a particular language model to build out their phishing emails, we can actually put a pattern to that, understand that pattern, and chase it, which is good. But these things cannot just be, based off of what the email is. We also have to look at behaviors about how emails might arrive, where they came from. Does this user usually get emails from this particular subject? We can actually provide a whole bunch of behavior kind of things to that in email today. It's the way to really actually stop a lot of phishing so it's never even seen. And like I say, it doesn't matter exactly how that's crafted. Some of that craftiness that they're doing, like I say, we can actually detect that. But at the same time, we can look at the behaviors and where that stuff came from and do that. So this is where I wanted to get, and I still got time. Yep, good, I'm on time. So how do we secure AI in the future? Well, there's securing AI and then securing the rest of the world from AI, right? We'll kind of define that in two different things. And most of this is basically how do you protect, your network, your resources from AI. This is true today, it was true yesterday, it'll be true tomorrow. Is we really have to start looking about what people have access to in the network. Yeah, when I started doing networking, our university didn't even have a firewall. I'm talking 1987. We're connected to the internet. We were the internet hub of the state of Arizona at the time. We were the internet from that perspective in those days. We didn't have a firewall. We didn't actually put a firewall in on the university network until about 2003 or 2004. I mean, that's a long time, to go run without a firewall. Completely open to the internet, real IP addresses, nothing was being natted, none of that. We were open to the internet, and it was like that for a long time. I know of universities that were doing that not that long ago that still had a lot of things very much open to the internet. Today, it's not that way. So what we've actually started doing then, we start talking about all these different things that really kind of, too far. Button, there we go. So if you want to start looking and reading about it, the CISA Zero Trust Maturity Model and NIST 171, there's actually a couple different 171 articles, but just put in Zero Trust NIST 171 into Google, and you'll get all the information you could want to digest about what Zero Trust is. But basically what Zero Trust is what we call least privilege access. So when I showed up here at the university today, I found the guest wireless, I get on the guest wireless and I get dumped straight out to the internet. I can't really go anywhere on campus, right? Because they don't trust me much. And they probably shouldn't, right? Because I just showed up, got the little code and went on about my way. Now, a lot of universities, if you're a student, you log on, you get onto the student network, right? You're treated as a student and from the student network you can do certain things, other things you can't do. That's part of segmentation, and that's the beginning of least privilege access. We can take this to be a long ways, and there's actually a lot of places doing that now, including universities, is that you log onto the network. I'm Lou. I'm a vendor. I get put onto I get vendor access, and being a vendor, I only have access to certain things. I can't log into the student information system. I can't log into any administrative systems. I can just get to the things from a vendor perspective. And maybe even specific to me or my company could be that specific. Least privilege access from a student perspective, as you get onto the network, you say you're a student, you can get to student resources. You can't get into any administrative resources. You can't get into research. You can't do a lot of things as a student. You can get to the labs that you need to do. You can get to the student information system to look at your grades or whatever it may be. All of that. That's what least privilege access is. Now, saying that, in the few minutes I've said that, it's really easy. Doing it for an entire university or a very large company, there's a lot more to it than that. And that's what actually, has prevented people from doing it in the past. We are making it much easier. So automation, machine learning is actually making this easier for you to actually go out and do, which is good. Now, breaking this down to another piece here is segmentation. Segmentation is, what can I talk to on my network? Can I talk to the machine next to me? Can I talk to the servers in the data center? One of the biggest problems we have when we go in and work with somebody who's been breached is they have very little segmentation. That means basically everything's in play that we know that this machine right here was compromised. What else did this machine actually talk to? And if you have the visibility that says you can track the visibility of every machine that's on your network talking to somebody, which people do these days, that when you connect onto the network, they'll track it, so they have that visibility. I can say, yeah, that machine that's right here talked to these 100 other machines, so we need to go look at those other 100 machines. And that can be a lot of work if you don't have a tool that actually does that. So you might have that visibility, but you have to go back and dig through a whole bunch of tools to figure it out. So all of this kind of goes together, right? All of these things here build on each other, right? You can't do segmentation without visibility. You can't do segmentation without, you can't do least privilege without segmentation, and you can't do zero trust without all of this. That's how all that builds up there. And to me, this is one of the things I actually specialize in. I've been doing this for some time. And, some of it can be easy. Sometimes, from wireless networks, it's easy to segment them. Wired networks might be a little bit harder. Data centers have their own challenge, how we actually secure all this. But this is, to me, this is how we combat AI, because you're going to have somebody that gets exploited. And that's the real realm of where we're at today. With AI and without AI, people will get compromised. There are, spoofing attacks, phishing attacks, people leaving their PC just sitting wide open. We used to have a whole big team of folks that would come in and do penetration testing. And they had an on-site side of their penetration testing. And 40% of their customers, they had a guy that worked on that team that could walk in the front door, talk to the person sitting there that's saying, hey, hi, how can I help you? 40% of the people he would talk to, they would let him sit down at their keyboard and type stuff into the computer. 40%, which is kind of scary. Now, you have to understand that 90% of the customers that they had were banks and governments. And he could just walk in and get access to a computer 40% of the time. Now, and the other side of the house of this is that this particular team, 90% of the customers that they had, they actually got full access to their infrastructure if they were allowed to plug into their network. If they could plug into their network, 90% of them would get access to some very serious resources. And like I say, again, most of their customers were governments and banks. I mean, this is the state of things. That's gotten better over the last few years. People are starting to lock a lot of this stuff down, but this is how we actually can stop all of that, just from some very simple tasks from that perspective. So, wrapping this up. So, generative AI isn't really coming, it's here. It's here today. Oh, one other attack that I didn't actually mention, because one of the teams I work on with a group called InfraGard. One of the guys that leads up the team I'm on is actually, he works for a very large bank. And they've already compromised banks with video chat AI. That basically you have, VPs at banks video chatting back and forth to each other using things like FaceTime and other tools, non-corporate tools, I'll say that, non-corporate tools, to FaceTime critical information back and forth to each other. And, one of these particular banks lost $4 million in the process of that. And it was all done through a video chat that was all spoofed. So that's happened. All right. All right, so the full package of generative AI is coming. It's pretty much here today. Will it get worse? Probably. It probably will get worse. And it's something that we need to be prepared for and keep working on. I don't know if I necessarily agree with, back up. Oop, uh-oh, wrong thing. Oh no, hit the wrong button. Oh, come on, stop doing that. All right, I can finish this up without slides anyway. So where we're at today, yes, it's affecting everything. We are seeing the attacks. They are getting worse. We need to keep a diligent effort on that. The back-end infrastructure of all this needs to be taken care of. It's a new world for, younger folks, recent graduates, folks that get to play with this in college, universities doing research, all of that. That's where we're at today. I don't think it's as bad as some people say, as far as the attacks go on, because even getting access to somebody's account, you should have things like multi-factor authentication built in. Passwordless is another thing that actually helps with against these attacks, using passwordless technologies. Those kinds of technologies are here today. We have to start using them more for everything. And hopefully we don't have to have multi-factor authentication to get into our house, but we're headed. God, I've got something in my throat. We're headed down that path right now. The next thing that I think for the world to start looking at, from how is starting looking about how can I, you, in our everyday lives, really start making use of AI and embracing it. Right? It's not something we can stick our head in the sand and hide from. It's something we're going to have to use in our daily lives going forward. It will get here, someday. I mean, I can't imagine that, 30-some years ago when I first got my first starts into networking, that I had no concept that, my mom and dad's house, my father's 90, my mom's in her late 80s, they have a 100 meg connection to their house. They watch all of their TV off of streaming services. It's hard to imagine that when I started in networking, when the entire internet for the state of Arizona ran over 4 T1s. A whole, maybe 6 megabits. For the entire state of the Arizona, that's what the internet was. And that's kind of where we're at with AI. It's going to expand. It's going to become a much bigger part of our lives. It should make our lives better. I believe it will make our lives better, but we're going to have to learn how to use it, and we're going to have to learn how to secure it. Half the problems that we're going to have, we don't know about what those problems are yet today. We're going to find that out, and we're going to have to keep working at it to make it secure, make it, easier to use, and make it something for everybody. So that's pretty much it. Any questions? Yeah, that's right. We're supposed to do questions. Oh, she has a question. We have to put the questions on the mic.
Hello, thank you for the talk. My name is Alma, and I'm a student here at Cal Poly. I'm getting my bachelor's in Technology Operations Management and minor in CIS. I've also been studying at the NetAcad, Cisco. I've completed 6 of the courses there.
Nice.
Through Pasadena College, actually, because I transferred from there to here. And I wonder what's your advice for somebody like me trying to get into cybersecurity, to get a career in cybersecurity?
Sure. So you're on the right path, right? And taking as many courses and classes as you can is always going to be helpful because there's going to be shortcuts to learning. Folks that are really good at cybersecurity have this, this want to solve puzzles is the best way to put it. That you have to go, I need to understand how that works so I can understand how I can actually see where that's going and what that's going to be done with that. Really understanding that at a very rudimentary level, whether it's, how code works. I mean, if you want to get to the code side of the house, I'm not the code guy. I came from the networking side. I classify security people into two classes. What I call, the network geeks and the coding geeks. On those two sides, and figuring out where you want to end up in those.
I'm actually interested in project management for cybersecurity.
Yep. So from a project management side of it, and so whether it's cybersecurity, networking, I've done lots of I've worked with a lot of project managers from large scale projects that I've been involved in. And you have to really start to have an understanding of what things need to be done and what it takes to do them. You might not have to know how to do them, but you have to kind of know what it takes to do some of these things. Because from a project management standpoint, you can't say, well, I'm going to give you 3 days to go code this up, to go write code. Well, it might take them 3 days. It might take them 3 weeks, depending on what it is really understanding and be able to put parameters around what that process is, what they need to go do. I mean, it's like you go the other route, and the hardware route, I need a new chip that's going to do this, right? To develop a chip from an idea to an actual product, it's about 1.5 years. At best, right, is understanding what those processes are and what the people who are doing those are doing. I mean, like I say, I've worked with a lot of project managers that used to be network people. They understood networks and they did it, and that really helped. I've worked with some product managers that knew nothing about networking. A good project manager, can learn from the people on the project, but it's a lot better if they know ahead of time. And it just makes them better at that. So having at least somewhat of an understanding of what you're trying to project manage will make you much more successful from that standpoint.
Thank you. Just one quick question. What are the certifications that are most wanted or seek after right now? Because I've been considering getting the CyberOps as a starter.
Yep.
I also completed the CCNA course.
Yep.
But that's a little bit harder, so I think. But from your experience in the field, what do you see?
So I've actually given this advice to a lot of college students. Is you want to get certifications that are focused on what your job is. And some of that understanding, so depending on what your arc is, right? Because I know there's certifications for project managers, right? But they're more generic and those kinds of things. Now, from a cybersecurity perspective, yes, I mean, all of the string of cybersecurity stuff that falls under the CCNA, CCNP, all the way up to a CCIE, to me, you can't go wrong digging through those. SANS is another one. So SANS offers some really good courses. And they're somebody that they've been around for a very long time. I've taken SANS courses for a big chunk of my career. They're very, very good from that perspective. But from a certification standpoint, just starting to get the certs it's almost table stakes for a lot of jobs these days to at least have some understanding of that is getting that, so you can be a bit more specific than you would with just with a bachelor's degree or whatever you might have, and just building off of that. I mean, to me, it really has to line up with what you're doing. So anything cyber, from my world in the Cisco world, it's all great, and SANS is the other one I really like.
Thank you so much.
And the other one is going to things like DEF CON and Black Hat and those kinds of things. Those are actually very good as well. There's a lot of good papers and things like that written at those and presented at those. So you get a good kind of view of process. It's not teaching about things, but it's a lot of things about the process folks went through for their hacks and those kinds of things. So that's another really good thing to have under your belt as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, another endorsement of DEF CON, so that's good. Any other questions? So, thank you very much for your time. I really enjoyed it, and hopefully you did as well too. And we'll hopefully get invited back sometime next year. So, thank you.